I never thought I would find myself in this situation, but life has a way of throwing curveballs that you never see coming. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Melissa for 7 years. Our relationship started off strong. We were the perfect couple, full of love and laughter. We bought a little house together, and I even took on the responsibility of caring for my aging parents who lived nearby. Melissa always pretended to care for them too, claiming she wanted to help out. Little did I know, her caring facade was just a cover for the lies she was weaving behind my back. Things started to change a few months ago. At first, it was subtle. I noticed Melissa was spending more time away from home. She said she was volunteering at a local charity, helping the elderly, which I thought was great. But there were small inconsistencies, like how she always came back late and smelled different, like perfume I didn't recognize. I dismissed it at first, convincing myself I was being paranoid. Then came the late-night calls. She'd take them in the other room, always with a hush in her voice. I could hear snippets of conversation that didn't add up, but she brushed off my concerns when I brought it up. "Oh, it's just work stuff, Jake. You know how it is," she'd say, her voice sharp. But I could feel the tension build inside me every time she spoke to me like that. One day I decided to take matters into my own hands. I wasn't some weak-willed husband who would let his wife walk all over him. So I began to snoop. I went through her phone while she was in the shower. I know it's wrong, but I needed to know the truth. I found messages that made my heart drop. Flirty texts with someone named Kevin, and they were explicit. My stomach churned as I read through their exchanges, filled with words of desire and plans to meet up, all while I was at work or caring for my parents. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. My mind raced as I pieced together everything: the late nights, the changes in her behavior, the little lies she told. I felt sick, like the world around me was spinning out of control. I was angry. Angry at her for lying, and angry at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. The moment she stepped out of that shower, I knew I had to confront her. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for her to come out, the phone still in my hands. When she finally walked into the living room, wrapping herself in a towel, I couldn't hold back. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but shaky. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. I tossed her phone on the coffee table and said, "Who's Kevin?" Her face paled, and in that moment I saw all the excuses flood through her mind. "Oh, that's just a friend from the charity," she stammered, trying to hold onto her little web of lies. I didn't want to hear it. I was done with her excuses. "A friend, really, because your texts say otherwise." I could see her scrambling for words, trying to maintain that perfect image she had created for herself, but the facade was cracking. That confrontation unleashed a storm of emotions in me. The rage was fierce, but it was quickly overtaken by a wave of sadness. I loved her. Or at least I thought I did. It was hard to reconcile the woman I married with the one standing in front of me, panicking and lying. I felt like I was drowning in betrayal. As the initial shock wore off, I began to process everything. My thoughts spiraled into what I was going to do next. My parents needed me, and I was still reeling from the pain of Melissa's betrayal. The emotional toll was heavy, but I had to make a decision, one that would set the course of my life moving forward. I stared at her, waiting for her to admit what she had done, but all I saw was denial. "I'll give you one chance, Melissa," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "Tell me the truth and we can figure this out. But if you lie again, I'm done." Her eyes flickered with fear, but I could see the stubbornness in her, that part of her that would rather lie than face the consequences of her actions. This was the beginning of a long, winding road filled with turmoil, and I was still trying to navigate the mess we had created together. The wait for her response felt eternal, and I had no idea what would come next. As I stood there staring at Melissa, the weight of the moment settled heavily on my shoulders. She was my wife, my partner, and yet the woman I faced was a stranger wrapped in an elaborate facade. I waited for her answer, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. My heart raced, a mix of hope and dread gnawing at my insides. Would she come clean, or would I be met with more lies? "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally replied, her voice shaking slightly. The denial was evident, and I felt a pulse of anger rise within me. "Don't play games with me, Melissa," I said, trying to keep my tone measured. "I saw the messages. I know you've been seeing someone else." I took a deep breath, willing myself to remain calm. Kevin, you've been texting him about meeting up for sex. Is that what this charity work is really about? Her expression shifted as reality crashed in. I saw the recognition in her eyes, followed by a flicker of guilt, brief, but it was there. Jake, she stammered. I could see her trying to think of a way out, but I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses anymore. You don't have to explain, I interrupted. It's clear you've made your choice, I just want to know why. She paused, and for a moment I thought I might finally get the truth. I felt neglected, Jake. You were always at your parents' house helping them. Because they need me. I shot back, my anger boiling over. I'm trying to take care of my family. You knew that when we got married. I thought you'd have time for me too, she yelled, her voice rising in pitch. You hardly pay attention to me anymore. I needed affection, Jake. I needed someone who wanted me. Her words stung, but I wasn't going to let her manipulate the narrative. So instead of coming to me, you decided to cheat. That's your solution. My emotions were a whirlwind, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall. I made a mistake. It was just sex, Jake. It didn't mean anything. Her voice was increasingly desperate, the facade beginning to crumble. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like she was treating this as if it were just a casual fling, something easy to brush off. Just sex. I echoed incredulously. You don't get to minimize this, Melissa. This isn't just about sex, it's about trust. You betrayed me. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up my hand to stop her. No more excuses. Just give me a straight answer. Do you still want to be with me? She hesitated, her eyes darting away from mine. That moment of silence spoke volumes. It was as if I could see her weighing her options, calculating whether the comfort of our life together was worth the effort of reconciling her betrayal. I don't know, she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. In that instant, my heart shattered. I had been prepared for anger, for the fight of my life to keep my marriage intact, but never for the realization that she wasn't sure about us. I felt the blood drain from my face, and I staggered back as if I'd been punched in the gut. Words escaped me as I struggled to process the enormity of her admission. I turned away, my mind racing. I needed to calm down. I didn't want to say something I might regret. I stepped outside, breathing in the crisp evening air, trying to steady my racing heart. My parents, who needed my help, crossed my mind, and the weight of my responsibilities seemed heavier than ever. They had always been my priority, but now I was faced with a decision that could redefine my future. Inside, I could hear Melissa packing, her footsteps echoing through the house. I felt a mix of sadness and anger boiling within me. This was supposed to be our life together, a partnership built on love and support. Instead, it felt like a battlefield, and I was losing. After a few minutes of silence, I knew it was time to return. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I opened the door and found her sitting on the sofa, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked vulnerable, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I quickly suppressed it. Jake, I didn't mean it that way. She said, her voice strained. I love you and I don't want to lose you. Do you really? I challenged, stepping closer, because it doesn't feel like it. You love the idea of me, the life we built together, but that isn't enough for you. You chose him over us. She shook her head fervently, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. I was done with the back and forth. I need time to think, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. This isn't something we can fix right away. You need to figure out what you want. I left her sitting on the couch, the weight of her betrayal hanging heavily in the air. As I walked away, a sense of clarity began to wash over me. I had to take control of my life, my happiness, and my future. Whatever road lay ahead, I would face it head on. The aftermath of this confrontation was just beginning, and I needed to prepare for what came next. The next few days were a blur of emotions. I moved through life like a ghost, going through the motions but feeling utterly detached from everything around me. Work was a distraction, but even there I found it hard to concentrate. My thoughts kept drifting back to the confrontation with Melissa, replaying every word, every look exchanged. The uncertainty hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating me. Melissa kept texting and calling, but I ignored her attempts to reach out. I needed space to think, to process what had happened. I found solace in spending more time with my parents. They were aging and needed my support, and it was comforting to be there for them when I felt so lost. Their gratitude reminded me of the love we had built as a family. But every time I stepped back into my home, I was reminded of the chaos that awaited me. The silence was deafening, and the memories of our life together, once so vibrant, now felt tainted. I'd find her things scattered across the house, her favorite mug on the kitchen counter, her shoes at the door, little reminders of the life we had shared. Each small item felt like a weight dragging me down further into despair. One evening, as I was sitting at the kitchen table, a thought struck me. I realized that if I wanted closure, I needed to confront the situation head-on. I had to face Melissa, but this time I would approach it differently. Rather than allowing her to spin her excuses, I would lay down the facts and demand honesty. When I returned home that night, Melissa was waiting for me, her expression a mix of hope and fear. I could see she had been crying, her eyes were puffy and red. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked tentatively, her voice shaky. I nodded, leading her into the living room. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension crackle in the air. "I need you to be completely honest with me, Melissa," I said, adopting a serious tone. "No more lies, no more excuses, just the truth." She nodded, her face pale. "Okay, I promise." "Why did you cheat?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with pain. "What did Kevin offer you that I could?" She stared at the floor, her lips trembling. "I felt neglected, Jake. I was lonely. You were always there for your parents, and I didn't know how to cope. I thought I could find comfort elsewhere." "Comfort?" I scoffed. "You thought a fling would fix what was missing in our marriage. You didn't even try to talk to me about it." The frustration bubbled to the surface, and I struggled to keep my emotions in check. "I know," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I made a mistake. I was weak. I should have come to you instead of running away." "Yeah, you should have," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You say you love me, but you betrayed me. You chose to lie and deceive instead of having an honest conversation. Do you even understand the pain you caused?" "I do," she exclaimed, desperation in her voice. "I'm sorry, Jake. I've realized how much I love you. I don't want to lose you. I'll do anything to fix this." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a flicker of hope, but it was overshadowed by the reality of what she had done. "What does fixing this even look like?" I asked, my voice tired. "You can't just undo a betrayal like this. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild." "I know, but I'm willing to try. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes," she pleaded, her eyes wide with sincerity. I considered her words, and for a moment I allowed myself to entertain the thought of reconciliation. But then the reality of our situation crashed back over me. "And what do you want from me? Do you want me to just forget this? To pretend it never happened?" "I want you to try to forgive me," she replied softly, her voice breaking. "I want us to work through this together. I don't want to lose the life we built." I could see the earnestness in her eyes, but the pain of betrayal was still fresh. "Melissa, it's not that simple. I need time to think about whether I can still love you after this. Trust is not easily regained." "I understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll give you time. Just don't shut me out. I want to be here for you, to support you, to make things right." That night, as I lay awake in bed, I wrestled with conflicting feelings. A part of me wanted to believe her, to give our marriage another chance. We had shared so much, built a life together. But another part of me screamed that I couldn't go back to a relationship built on lies. I spent the following days in a fog, oscillating between anger and sorrow. I avoided talking to Melissa except for the bare minimum, keeping to myself as I tried to figure out my next steps. I began to research couples therapy and how to rebuild trust in a relationship, trying to arm myself with knowledge before making any decisions. But as I dug deeper into the subject, I couldn't shake the feeling that Melissa's betrayal was not just a mistake. It was symptomatic of deeper issues within our marriage, issues I had ignored for too long. It became clear that if we were going to navigate this path together, we would need to address those underlying problems head-on. The road ahead would be rocky, filled with uncertainty, but I knew one thing: I couldn't let her betrayal define me. I had to reclaim my power, whether it meant rebuilding our marriage or walking away altogether. It was time to take charge of my life and figure out what I truly wanted moving forward. As the days turned into weeks, a sense of routine began to settle in, albeit an uneasy one. The silence between Melissa and me was palpable, filled with unspoken tension. We coexisted in the same house, but it felt more like we were living as strangers under the same roof. The emotional distance was perhaps the hardest part. I was determined to take the necessary steps to understand what had gone wrong in our marriage. I started focusing on self-reflection, recognizing my own shortcomings and where I might have contributed to Melissa feeling neglected. I spent hours journaling my thoughts, what I wanted, what I needed, and what I was willing to fight for. It was an exhausting but necessary process, and one that forced me to reckon with my own feelings. One day, I finally mustered up the courage to suggest couples therapy. I was nervous as I broached the subject with Melissa, but to my surprise, she jumped at the idea. "I'll do anything," she said, her eyes wide with determination. "I want to save our marriage, Jake. I know I messed up, but I want to prove to you that I can change." We scheduled our first session with a therapist named Dr. Adams, a middle-aged woman with a calming presence. The first meeting was awkward, to say the least. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between us a chasm filled with unspoken hurt. Dr. Adams began by asking us to share our feelings, and what followed was a roller coaster of emotions. Melissa spoke first, her voice trembling as she recounted her feelings of loneliness and neglect. "I felt like I was losing you to your parents," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't know how to reach out. I thought I could find solace somewhere else." I watched her as she opened up, and a part of me felt a flicker of compassion, but it was quickly overshadowed by an overwhelming wave of anger. "You think running to another man was the answer?" I interjected, my voice rising. "You could have talked to me, but instead you decided to cheat." Dr. Adams interjected, guiding us back to the topic at hand. "Let's focus on how both of you can express your needs in the relationship. Jake, how did it make you feel when Melissa sought comfort outside of your marriage?" The question hit me hard. "I felt betrayed," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I thought we were partners. I thought we were in this together. Finding out she cheated shattered my trust. I felt like I couldn't even recognize the person I love anymore." As the session went on, we began to explore the deeper issues in our relationship. Melissa and I were both guilty of taking each other for granted. I had become so consumed with caring for my parents that I neglected my own emotional needs and, unwittingly, hers. It was a harsh but necessary realization. We were both complicit in the widening gulf between us. Over the next few weeks, we continued our sessions with Dr. Adams, and I began to see small changes in Melissa. She was more open about her feelings, and I could see her making an effort to reconnect. She started helping out more around the house and even suggested date nights, trying to remind us of the love we once shared. However, every time she reached out, I felt a mix of hope and skepticism. I wanted to believe that change was possible, but the scars of her betrayal were fresh, and trust was still a long way off. I had to tread carefully, balancing my desire for reconciliation with the need to protect myself from further heartbreak. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned home to find a candle-lit dinner waiting for me. Melissa had gone all out, set the table with our best dishes, lit candles, and even prepared my favorite meal. As I walked in, she smiled nervously, an expression of hope adorning her face. "Surprise," she said, her voice bright. I could feel my heart soften at the effort she had put into this gesture, but the memories of the betrayal crept back in, reminding me of the weight of our situation. "This is nice, Melissa," I replied cautiously, taking a seat at the table. We began to eat in silence, the atmosphere a mix of tension and tentative optimism. Finally, I broke the silence. "Why the sudden effort?" She looked down at her plate, her fork picking at the food. "I want to show you that I'm serious about fixing this. I know that I hurt you, but I'm willing to do the work to make it right. I miss us, Jake." "I miss us too," I admitted, my voice softening. "But it's hard for me to believe that things can change just like that." "I understand," she replied, her voice sincere. "But I'm trying, and I hope you can see that. I want to fight for us." As we talked, I could feel the tension slowly loosening, but there was still a lingering doubt in my mind. Could I really trust her again? Would she follow through on her promises, or was this just another fleeting moment of regret? That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was still fragile. I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, trying to balance hope and caution. I knew that I needed to take my time, that healing wouldn't happen overnight. But the more I reflected on our situation, the more I realized that I was also capable of change. I had neglected Melissa. I had let my responsibilities overshadow the love we once shared. If we were going to make it work, we both needed to be all in, fully committed to rebuilding our relationship. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a while I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. It wouldn't be easy, but we were both willing to try. It was a small step, but it was a start. As the weeks turned into months, the process of rebuilding trust in my marriage felt like climbing a steep mountain. Each session with Dr. Adams was an emotional roller coaster, filled with breakthroughs and setbacks. Slowly, I began to notice some positive changes within both myself and Melissa. We were learning to communicate better, to share our feelings and vulnerabilities without fear of judgment or backlash. Melissa made a conscious effort to be present. She'd surprise me with little acts of kindness. A note left on my pillow, a cup of coffee made just the way I liked, or a spontaneous hug when I least expected it. Each gesture was a reminder that she was trying to prove her commitment, but with each act of affection also came the nagging voice in my head, warning me to be cautious. I had a long way to go before I could fully trust her again. One day, after a particularly productive therapy session, Melissa suggested we take a weekend trip to a cabin in the woods. Just the two of us, she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. We can disconnect from everything and focus on us. I hesitated. It felt like a big step, and part of me worried that escaping into nature wouldn't address the issues we still needed to confront. But then I thought about how we hadn't spent quality time together in ages. Maybe it was the break we needed to reconnect without the distractions of daily life. So I agreed. We packed our bags and set off for the cabin, located in a remote area surrounded by tall pines and a tranquil lake. As we drove, I could feel a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The air was crisp and fresh, and I hoped this weekend would give us a chance to heal. Once we arrived, the beauty of the surroundings took my breath away. The cabin was cozy, and the interior was warm and inviting. Melissa beamed with joy as she explored, and for a brief moment I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The first evening we prepared dinner together, laughing and sharing stories like we used to. There was something magical about being away from our daily responsibilities. We sat outside by the fire, roasting marshmallows and reminiscing about simpler times in our relationship. The flickering flames cast a soft glow, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. But then, as the night wore on, the shadows of doubt crept back in. A part of me was still hesitant to let my guard down. I couldn't shake the memories of betrayal, and as much as I wanted to enjoy the moment, I felt a tightening in my chest. That evening, as we settled into bed, I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I could hear Melissa's soft breathing beside me, and I turned to face her. "Hey," I whispered, careful not to disturb the tranquil atmosphere. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice still thick with sleep. "I'm just thinking," I replied, "about everything." She propped herself up on one elbow, concern etched on her face. "What's on your mind?" "I guess I'm just scared," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Scared that we'll fall back into old patterns, or that maybe this is just a temporary fix." Melissa's expression softened as she reached out to take my hand. "I understand. I'm scared too. I don't want to lose you, Jake. I know I messed up, but I'm committed to making things right. I'm trying to be better." I looked into her eyes, searching for sincerity. "I want to believe that, I really do, but it's hard for me to forget." "I know," she said, her voice steady, "but we can't let our past define our future. We need to keep working at it together." Her words resonated with me, and I felt a flicker of resolve. "You're right. I need to let go of some of this resentment if we're going to move forward. I'm willing to try." We spent the rest of the night talking about our feelings, our fears, and our hopes for the future. It was a vulnerable conversation, and the emotional weight lifted slightly from my chest. By morning, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The next day, we hiked through the forest, enjoying each other's company and the beauty of nature around us. The physical activity helped clear my mind, and I found myself laughing and joking with her just like old times. We shared stories, recalling fun memories from our early days together, and I felt a warmth envelop me, a feeling I thought I had lost. Later, as we sat by the lake, the sun shimmering on the water's surface, I felt a sense of peace. It was as if I could almost see a path forward, one that encompassed both our past struggles and our present efforts at reconciliation. But as we returned to the cabin, that peace was suddenly shattered by a notification on my phone. I hadn't realized I had left it on, and the sound broke the serene atmosphere. I picked it up to see a message from a number I didn't recognize. Curiosity piqued, I opened it and felt my heart drop. It was a message from Kevin. "Hey, hope you're doing well, thinking of you. Let's catch up soon." My stomach twisted. In knots, I looked over at Melissa, who was busy preparing dinner, seemingly unaware of the storm brewing inside me. The feelings of hope I had just built up began to crumble, replaced by a wave of anger and betrayal. "Jake, what's wrong?" Melissa asked, noticing my expression. I felt like I was standing at a precipice. I had started to allow myself to trust her again, and now this message threatened to undo all the progress we had made. My emotions surged as I confronted the reality of our situation. "Melissa, Kevin just texted me," I said, my voice strained. Her face paled and I could see the panic in her eyes. "What? I didn't give him your number," she exclaimed, clearly taken aback. "Doesn't matter, you need to explain this. I thought we were working on us, and yet here I am getting messages from him. Are you still in contact?" The tension in the room escalated as the weight of the past collided with the fragile hope of our present. I felt betrayed all over again, and the hurt that I thought was fading came rushing back like a tidal wave. Melissa's face twisted in confusion and fear. "No, I swear, I haven't talked to him since everything happened. I mean it. I needed answers, and I needed them now." My heart was pounding in my chest as I demanded the truth. The moment had arrived, and I was prepared to confront the reality of our relationship once and for all. The tension in the cabin reached its peak as I stood there, phone in hand, staring at the message from Kevin. I felt like I was balancing on the edge of a cliff, teetering between the hope I had started to feel and the bitter reality of what had happened between us. My emotions were a storm raging inside me, and I needed answers. "Jake, please," Melissa begged, her voice trembling. "I haven't spoken to him since I confessed. I swear, I don't even know how he got your number." "Then why is he contacting you?" I shot back, my voice rising. "I thought we were past this. I thought we were going to work on our marriage. If you still have ties to him, how can I trust that you're all in?" Melissa looked hurt, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy, but the anger and betrayal overshadowed it. I needed her to understand the full weight of what this meant. "I wanted to believe in you, Melissa. I wanted to trust that we could move forward," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I know," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "But I am trying, you have to believe me. Kevin is part of my past, and I want to leave him there. I only want you." "Then you need to be honest with me now," I insisted, my heart racing. "What are you going to do about this? Are you going to respond?" I don't want to respond," she exclaimed, her voice desperate. "I want to focus on us. Please just give me a chance. I'm not that person anymore." I looked at her, searching for the truth in her eyes. I could see the pain she felt, but doubt lingered in the back of my mind. "I can't keep doing this, Melissa. If you want us to work, you have to prove that I can trust you again. You have to cut ties with him completely." She nodded vigorously, her expression earnest. "I will. I promise I'll block him right now. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I'm committed to us." With shaky hands, she took my phone and quickly typed a response to Kevin. "I'm sorry, but I am no longer interested in talking. Please don't contact me again." She hesitated for a moment, staring at the screen. "This is for us, right?" "Yes," I said, my heart heavy but hopeful that this could be a turning point. "You need to mean it, Melissa. No more secrets, no more lies." She hit send, a look of determination crossing her face. "Done," she said, her tone stronger now. "I don't want him in my life anymore. I just want to focus on fixing what we have." I watched her, my heart torn between lingering doubts and a growing sense of relief. It was a crucial step, but I knew that rebuilding trust would take time. "I hope you mean that," I said, my voice low, "because I can't keep going back and forth. I need to know that you're truly committed." "I am, I swear," she insisted, her eyes pleading. "I'll show you, just give me time. I know I messed up, but I want to prove that I can be the wife you need." As the tension began to ease, I took a deep breath and moved to sit beside her. I hadn't realized how tense my body had been until I felt the weight slowly lift. "I want us to work too," I admitted, my voice softening. "But we have to be honest with each other, no matter how difficult it is." Melissa nodded, wiping her tears. "I promise. I'll be honest, and I'll do the work to make things right. I want to be the partner you deserve." We spent the rest of that night talking, addressing all the questions that had been left unspoken for so long. The conversation flowed with raw honesty, filled with vulnerability that we both desperately needed. The pain of the past was still fresh, but there was a flicker of hope that we could navigate through it together. In the days that followed, I watched as Melissa made genuine efforts to show her commitment. She started attending therapy sessions on her own, began taking time to support me in caring for my parents, and even suggested regular check-ins where we could discuss our feelings openly. It was a stark contrast to the secrecy and lies that had characterized our past. But even as I began to see the changes, I reminded myself that healing would not be linear. There would be days when doubt crept back in, nights when I'd lie awake questioning everything. I was aware that it would take time to fully trust her again, and I had to be patient with myself as I navigated this journey. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun set over the horizon, I took her hand in mine. "You know, I still love you," I said, my voice steady. "But love alone isn't enough. We need to build a new foundation based on trust, honesty, and respect. It's a long road, but I believe we can get there." Melissa squeezed my hand, tears glistening in her eyes. "I love you too, Jake. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work. I won't let you down again." As we sat together, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It was still fragile, but perhaps we had taken the first step toward rebuilding what had been broken. The journey wouldn't be easy, but we were both committed to the fight. We would rebuild our marriage, brick by brick, and learn from the mistakes that had brought us to this point. Life was full of uncertainties, but I realized I had to embrace the journey ahead. Whatever challenges lay in store, I would face them with Melissa by my side. Together, we would find a way back to each other, stronger and more resilient than before. And perhaps, in time, we would write a new chapter in our love story, one defined not by betrayal, but by redemption and hope.